Something nice before we wreck it again. Can't bear to see your sweet face drop like a tear. 'Cause I need you here, you know you're my only friend. Our love is beautiful.
What's poppin', you beautiful humans? My name is Ariane Andrew.
I'm Matt Dillon, and welcome to another piping hot episode of Sippin' the Tea Quarantine, where we sip some tea, honey, and I guess what?
Spill that tea. Oh, you left me hanging.
I left you hanging. My bad.
That was
I'm excited today. We have somebody that's very layered in their approach to not only music to life, and I always love a layered conversation. So we have musician, artist, poet, few hashtags. Ethan Gold, his single just dropped, Our Love is Beautiful, album coming down the line later in the year. Welcome, sir.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me on. I feel I'm layered. I immediately went, am I layered? I'm layered like a birthday cake, you know?
Yes. That's great. It's like you have different layers to you.
There's some fruit. There's like a salty section. It's an experience.
Hey,
it's an experience. I love it. Well, let's kick into getting our viewers knowing about you. Ariane, ladies first. First in.
Yes. So let's start with this quarantine. What have been some positive takeaways? Obviously, it's a crazy time in the world. 2020. Woo! It's been a year. But, what are some things that, you've taken away with quarantine and maybe you've even learned some new skills? Spill the tea.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I felt on a global level, I'll say that I think we as a civilization needed to slow down. So whatever form, I would have never imagined this pause. I don't think anybody except the people who study pandemics had this on their minds. But actually, I feel we needed this pause, and I'm hoping when it ends, which it will end in some way, medically, whatever, they'll figure something out. But, that some of the stuff that we've learned on a kind of individual level, as well as, for example, I've been live streaming. For a long time, people have been like, you should live stream. I never wanted to do it. Took me a month or so of getting kind of, dude, you got to live stream. Anyway, I started doing it. I've been doing it regularly. And that's a skill. And it's a different way of doing a show, communicating. It's a totally different kind of communication. But in some ways, the intimacy of it, I was well, I'm going to just do whatever. I'm not going to care. I'm not going to be such a perfectionist. So that's actually that's a very tangible thing that I've learned. But on a global level, I'm hoping that when this ends, we will come back and people will maybe commute less and actually do, online meetings. We could have emissions go down. There's no reason for us all to, there's a lot of stuff that's actually really good. Let's use this digital stuff that we have in a positive way, as well as more generally, just the kind of consciousness that I think has happened that in the last few months. I think people are kind of thinking just a little more sensitive to the world in a way, because
it's true.
Yeah. So
yeah.
That was a long answer to a short question.
No, but it's good because exactly what you're saying. It's the world needed this, especially, you think about someone like you who's an artist and you're not a 9-to-5 person. So it's you know what I mean? The creativity and the hustle and the bustle and trying to make it, it's we needed to all kind of just slow down. It was good for Mother Nature. So I agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna say again.
Oh, I was just saying, I don't know if you know, around the world, there animals have, especially when it was really quiet, animals were apparently there were dolphins in Venice, in Italy, had actually made it up the Mediterranean to areas that had been just polluted and just filled with crazy stuff is happening.
I think I read that somewhere about the dolphins. I'm sure I saw that.
I think we needed let's take this ability to shift that we've all learned new things and keep doing it, because we need major shifts of the way we've been doing stuff.
We need more.
I want to talk about What?
I said, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, go ahead.
I couldn't hear. I want to jump into, relates to kind of like understanding, you know, the kind of life that we're living now. But I feel like in knowing your story a little bit and coming out of, you know, a brain injury and like that kind of storyline, and then traveling the world and kind of setting a reset on your own life kind of prepared you for a reset in the world. Can you take us back to, it relates to the single, which we'll get to, but I want to talk about your personal journey that led you into a newfound Ethan Gold, so to speak, I would say.
Yeah, well, I put out a record. I had been doing a lot of musical things, producing, scoring, and playing in bands and stuff, and finally put out my own debut record. Was working on the next one and a film score, and had a head injury, total freak out thing, fell off a wall at a party in New York, and anyway, so it was a major thing. And it's a thing that I'm not alone in experiencing, and there are people who've had much worse injuries than I did. But it was a long recovery. It was, you know, as I've said, I've talked with other people with head injuries, they say, oh, you know, at 6 months you think you finally are better, and then at a year you're like, oh, at 6 months I was still really not there. And then at 2 years you're looking back to the first year going, no, I was still not there. So it's a very slow ramp, and I was really lucky to have some great healers in my life, craniosacral work and acupuncture. But in general, for me, it was, as somebody who has always been sort of a thinker. In high school, I think people used to, you know, we learned about the thinker, that Rodin sculpture, and I think people would actually do that looking at me. They were going to, like, you know, pose as the thinker and then stare at me. But so for me, having a head injury, I think, was particularly interesting spiritually. That, like, okay, here's a person who's in their head a lot. We're going to take your head out of the equation, and basically you can't use it anymore. And so there's a period when I was getting to know who I was without, you know, wit, humor, verbal banter of any kind, or even like being able to negotiate, like, crossing streets. I was living in New York at the time, and just crowds and things were really, really unsettling and stressful and like scary to deal with for long. And conversation was, so I lost friends who just were like, I could feel they just found it sort of depressing to be around me, because it was like, oh, you know, like, oof, avoid, you know, too depressing, you know. And but I was, for lack of a better word, I'll just say it, my soul was still there, and I felt that it was very obvious to me. And also my musical, I was writing music before I was talking again.
Amazing.
And so for me, music was very much a way back into the world. And then just in general, as I coming back, I had a lot of material. I've always been writing a lot of music, but I found myself really having a clearer sense of kind of mission and the simplicity, wanting to focus on the simpler parts of my message in a way, and to bring forward something that would increase empathy in the world. I mean, if I you know, that's not my mission statement, but maybe it could be. I mean, I feel there's a chaos and a noise and the sort of competitive impulse of our culture, which produces great things, but also needs to be moderated by care and empathy for, you know, other people and for this.
For the world.
I was like, he came with props, man.
I was like, where is he going? But it's perspective, and it's kind of like, you know, even what's happening now with what happened with your brain injury. I always use the quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, you know? So it's about seeing, you know, a positive out of a negative situation. And for you, what it seems like when the whole brain injury happened, it was a way for you to tap in yourself and then create some amazing music. And speaking of your music, you know, let's walk us through the song Love is Beautiful. What was your thought process behind that, and what goes into, when, you know, your music when you're deciding to write it?
Yeah, Our Love is Beautiful. So I think you guys are maybe playing some of the video. I'm not sure about that, but the making this video for the song Our Love is Beautiful, which I had written before all this happened, but I have I have treasure troves of music in my. But anyway, I had a notion of making. I think I wanted to say hello to the world again, and I'd been isolated, and quite literally isolated, but also just a sense of separation. And somehow this idea developed because the song had. I knew the song had leaked around, and there were fans of it, and so I had a notion of making a video that expressed the whole world saying the song, speaking the song, which many interpret as like a romantic love song. Our Love is Beautiful, and it is that partly. And there are people who've sung it at their weddings and asked me for the chord charts, but for me, the song is also really about the broader love, which includes self-love. There's stuff about that in the song, love for a lover, but also generally everybody on the planet. And so it was quite scary, honestly. At that point, I was feeling better enough, but I had this notion. I'd heard about these round the world tickets since I was little. Like, oh, there's this, if you go one direction, airlines have these special deals where if you just go one way, you can do like, 25 stops, and you just, as long as you don't backtrack at all. So anyway, instead of having a film crew, I've done videos before. I directed music videos sometimes for others and myself, but I was like, well, this is going to be my film crew, and that's it. And
what's wrong with that?
I'll just do it myself, and also challenge myself to be in the world again. And it was scary. I mean, I like actually drew up a will before I left town. I was terrified, honestly. It was really like stepping back into the world and then going out to meet people around the world, some of whom I knew, some of whom I knew online or whatever, and many of whom I didn't know, and getting a global statement of this idea of the word love is, used and abused in pop music, but trying to kind of put it in the broadest way, which again goes to that message of like coming out of the head injury. Like, let's not overthink this with like the simplicity of the message. I think it's not hard to figure out what I'm about when you see that video.
Yeah.
There, I want to ask you the question, because it was like you drew up a will. Number one, it's like all these things. So your anticipation was there of like, holy shit, this could be like the best thing that I do, or it could be like the end of me. Yeah. Literally, you were preparing for the best and the worst. Yeah. What was it that tipped the scale that just made you be like, I'm going to just go around the world and meet strangers and ask them if I can film them? Yeah. Talking about like, what was that? Do you remember back in when you went? What was that initial push that made you be like, "I'm going to do this"?
I have a strong willpower as a person, and I think when I get an idea, it's sort of like I don't let it go, which gets me in trouble sometimes because I have so many ideas, and then I'm like, but I don't think once the idea happened, I don't think there was any question. Like once it kind of takes hold, then I'm just like, I'm on this train, and like the thought of getting off is sort of impossible. So, but I do remember the night before I left, there was no question that there was no like, it wasn't even like, might I not go? There was no question of that, but it felt really dark, honestly. I remember this really just dread feeling. And I think it was a sense of like exposing myself to the elements after a couple of years of being really sheltered. So interesting in these quarantine times, with us all having much more limited contact. Some people are more than others for situational reasons, obviously. But generally, people are more cloistered than they were. So there's a part of me that honestly is like a little concerned about when this ends, like if the sort of consciousness, the good parts of this are going to just get blown up. I really want people to hold on to the kind of focus and care and stuff.
Yeah.
Which there was no way I was like, it wasn't because of the head injury, the still being in that recovery period. There was no question of me like, I'm finally like, okay, I'm better, I'm going. It's like it was much more of like, there was still like a cautiousness because.
So what you're saying is that you don't want people to kind of lose what is happening now. Like for instance, like being able just to go outside, you're like, "Ooh, I get to get some fresh air." Mm-hmm. So are you saying that, you want people to continue on this road of being more conscious and having, I guess too, this has been like a time for people to self-reflect, and you can't change the world, but you can change yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So is that what you're hoping, is that people can continue on that wavelength of?
Absolutely. I'm hoping people communicate more. Like I've had connected conversations on Zoom with friends that I was a band I played with for years, and we've been Zooming every few weeks, the Honey Brothers, and like we've reconnected because of this. And there's other people I talk with, and just, like self-reflection, study, meditation, reading, I think all those things that were really, if you go back to humans as a species, and like where we came from, there was a lot more downtime. And I've talked about this for a long time, actually, this notion that like rumination time, like even as a kid, sometimes I actually think about when I used to take a school bus. I grew up in San Francisco, and I went to grade school from kindergarten to 8th grade in Marin County. I was on a school bus and you go around the whole city and then go out. So I was on the school bus for an hour, probably a full hour each way every day for that whole period of my childhood. And I sometimes think about my music and my way of being, and that hour, there was also the social, like screaming and all that, like the social stuff.
The children, yeah.
But yeah, the children. And I was always, I think, felt a little like, what am I, I was always a bit of an introvert, but the being able to stare out the window for an hour twice a day, not driving, not doing anything, literally just that rumination time. It wasn't like formal meditation, it wasn't yoga, it wasn't anything, but just literally time to kind of think. Like you look at tribal societies, like the quietness that people are able to have in their lives, going walking, a son and a father as a part of the training of the son to be like walking in the forest or wherever they are for, days on end. Mm-hmm. And they weren't sitting talking about, whatever the latest Game of Thrones or whatever episode, you know what I mean? Like there's time to just be in nature and be with each other and be with themselves. And so the quarantine in a small way is giving us just a little bit more of that. And I really want us to hold on to it on a personal level, but also on a global level, just environmentally, because people are using less gas. I mean, to put it bluntly, simply. And I hope that stays, and not only stays, but continues moving. We need to consciously move in that direction.
Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would say that too, just because if you look at what, fills the world, it's greed and all these things. And it's like with what's happening now, it's not just one person, it's everybody. And, like the coronavirus it doesn't discriminate. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't discriminate. Everyone has to kind of like take a step back. So I do agree with you that I hope that we continue on this wavelength of being more conscious of within ourselves, but also with the world, and being kinder, It's so,
And it's not rocket science in a way. Like what's, it's like, oh, how do we connect? How do we connect with, like, it's actually pretty simple. That's crazy.
Yes.
And that's part of like, I think why I'm like, oh, let's put out my simple music, like self-love. It's not actually that it can be difficult. It's not that complicated. Caring for the planet, it's pretty much that simple. Like, care, be conscious of what you do. Be aware that your actions are affecting everything on the planet.
So true.
Period.
I think both of you said that it's the consciousness, and I think Ari, you nailed it. It's kindness, and I think if we can proceed and move forward with those as our base plateaus, I think we're we're in good shape. So I wanna ask before we rapid fire you with some rapid questions. I want to know what's next for you in terms of Our Love Is Beautiful is here. It's seeping into the atmosphere. Where are you looking next? We got double albums. We've got things coming out. It's 2020. We've got a lot going on.
Yeah, so I have a record called Earth City, which is an expansion of these themes, the personal meeting the world. Our Love Is Beautiful is the third song on that album, and whatever, the single's out. So I'll be releasing Earth City probably in December, and releasing a few more singles between here and there, which haven't been decided yet, but a few more singles. And it's either going to be a double album. It may possibly be, I may possibly split it into, it's a new idea that I may split it into different records. But that's something for me to figure out in the next.
I was like, I'm learning new things as we go along.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, either Earth City or Earth City Part 1 will be out. It's just partly, I want to give things in a way that are digestible, and a 20-song album is definitely it's definitely a thing of its own. Forgetting what's the contents, just the girth of it is a thing. Yeah. So, but yeah, so Earth City will be either in its total form or partial form be coming out this year, and a few more singles. And I'm working on some videos, and I'm live streaming all the time on Saturdays at noon and 7:30. I live stream and play from all parts of my catalog.
Nice.
Take request. I call it Jukebox Roulette, which means people can, like a jukebox, ask for any song, and if I can play it, there are a few things that I've had to say.
Except you're not getting a quarter each time you do the request.
I know.
I was like, hello.
We gotta
good idea. You're absolutely right. I need to.
We'll put your Zelle information on this and be like, we're charging now.
Accepting donations. Hey, that's a new thing where people are saying, hey, accepting donations. That way, it's not like someone feels obligated, or that also with the time where people have lost their jobs, it's like, it gives the option, so you can put donations for each.
That's really a good idea. I thank you. So, but anyway, but for the newbies, what's cool, I had this, I sort of developed in the first few times I did it, but I call it Jukebox Roulette. And the roulette is, if you don't know songs, or if you just feel like spinning the wheel, basically you just pick a number between 1 and 20. And for the 20-song album, which may get split up into multiple albums, but I'll pick the song that's that number. So if you don't know a song, you could say, I want to hear, song 13, and then you don't know what you're going to get, and you get the song that I happen to know is the 13th song.
They don't know what they're getting, and you don't know which ones you're going to perform, really.
Yeah, so it's very spontaneous, and what's cool is I've had to learn, not from the record, well, I've learned those, but I've even, from the requests, I've learned, soundtrack things that I'm like, I'm never going to play that. And people have asked for things that I never thought I would play, including songs that were meant to be like ridiculous anyway, I've done a range of things. So it's been really fun for me, and the casual format of it's just, I'm here, I'm 5 feet from where we're talking right now.
Yeah.
Sitting at my piano or with a guitar. And anyway, so those shows will be going on while I'm putting out singles and videos, preparing for the album release in the end of the year.
Nice.
All right, we're gonna rapid fire now.
Yep, rapid fire. Okay. So, morning or nights?
Nights.
Okay.
If you could teach one subject in high school, what would it be?
Geography.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Ooh. You're sexy. I don't know. Who doesn't?
Yes,
okay.
come through.
And then
all right, and
Last
I got
one.
one more. What's the best thing that's happened to you this month?
This month, people who are at my live stream starting fan clubs online has been kind of crazy and fun, and just, yeah, it feels like I'm lighting a fire, and now there's actual like little embers like floating around in places that I didn't even think of.
Boom.
That's a nice way to put it.
Okay, so let everybody know where they can follow you at, where they can stream your music, and spill the tea.
My name is Ethan Gold, if you didn't know that already, and I am on the interwebs at ethangold.com. And I managed to get Ethan Gold as my handle on pretty much most of the social networks, on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And I'm live streaming on Instagram. I may start doing it elsewhere soon, on other places. So I'm on all of them if you prefer a different place. And yeah, the music, I've bunch of records, soundtracks, and also prior records, which are on Spotify and Apple Music and wherever fine music is sold.
Look him up, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Look him up. Ari, where can we find you, girl?
At Ariane Andrew across the board. And where can we find you, Matt?
You can find me at Matt Dillon 1983 across the board.
And we are about to jam on out as we wrap it up for Sippin' the Tea TV show. We will catch you guys next week, same time.
I love it.